So I got to tell you something. I am shocked beyond words that J-Lo and Ben Affleck didn't have a prenup. This was her fourth marriage, his second. It didn't work out for them the first time. It is a mess not to have a prenup. I know they were in love,
Right.
because here's the thing about love. Everybody who gets married makes an assumption it's going to be for the rest of their lives. About half the time it doesn't work out. So the idea that after that many marriages, I just assumed that there would be a prenup.
Right.
We know there is no prenup in this. And
Right.
that's why, by the way, this has dragged on for so long.
Oh, absolutely. They were both very active during this 2-year period, Harvey, where they were married. They both worked on a bunch of different projects that brought in millions and millions of dollars. And now it's like, how do you split that up? Because there's no prenup.
So no prenup means this is all community property for the 2 years that they were married.
Right.
They married in July of 2022. So we know, why don't you mention some of the movies that he did and cheated, because these would all be community property.
Right. So Ben and his good buddy Matt Damon, they created a company called Artist Equity in 2020.
Which we're going to get into in a minute.
Right. So here are the films that Ben made. Air, incredibly popular. The Instigators, Small Things, The Accountant 2 he's filming. There were other films as well, Harv.
All community property.
Right. Jennifer Lopez, for her part, also worked on an incredibly popular movie, Atlas. It was the biggest movie going on Netflix for a period of time. She had Marry Me. She had Shotgun Wedding with Prime. This Is Me Now. She launched an alcohol company.
And by the way, Netflix then made a multi-picture deal with her after Atlas. So
right.
you have that all, again.
Right. What happens with that?
Community property, which means they have to figure out how to divide all of this stuff. We'll get into the house in a minute. But in terms of what they are dealing with, there is now a third person in this divorce, Matt Damon. And here's why. Because in November of 2022, which is just a few months after they got married, which is critical, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck formed this company, Artist Equity, and they have produced a number of projects, including projects for her, but the projects you mentioned for them.
Does that indicate that she owns half of Ben's piece of the company?
So this is always an issue in divorces. What kind of stake does Jennifer Lopez have in this company?
Right.
It was created and it propelled once they were already married. And that then becomes community property. The question is, how far into the future does it go? Is she a permanent partner? What's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of horse trading here, because they haven't been able to settle this thing yet.
Yeah, so Harvey, all the value of that company that has grown during the course of the marriage is definitely community property. And then the benefit to the company that happens after their marriage is still part of that marriage. That company was formed during their marriage. She has an entitlement to all of that, to a share of that. And to your point about Matt Damon's now a third person in that divorce, it's because that's a partnership between Matt and Ben, and that partnership, they now have a third partner in that, and that is Jennifer Lopez, and she has not only an equity entitlement or a monetary entitlement to what they make, but also she's, again, partially a partner in this entire enterprise.
So they got to figure out how to divide this up, because what will ultimately happen here is they'll figure out some value of what her share is worth, and they'll settle for it. This is not going to end up in court. They'll end up settling this, but it's messy. And now they've got this house that they paid almost $61 million for, and they can't sell it. There are no buyers. This was always a really hard house to sell.
Trying to sell it for $68 million.
And they're going to take a big loss on this. They have to pay a mansion tax. They have to pay a realtor's fee. They had improvements of a couple of $1 million. And it is a hard house to sell because of where it is. It's a whole thing, but it's a mess. Jason, I want you to assume we're Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck. I'm not going to say which is which, okay?
I was just going to ask.
And we are going to tell you as our lawyer going into this, we don't want a prenup because this is going to last forever. what would you say to us?
You have got to be kidding me. What an asinine decision. I mean, honestly, it's not even about the money. They are both insanely wealthy. It is about when you start to unwind a marriage and you have these kind of monetary divisions, it creates animosity between you. It's impossible to have an amicable resolution when you have tens of millions of dollars at stake, even if you're worth hundreds of millions. It's so incredibly dumb and short-sighted, especially, you made this point, to people who have both been married a number of times. It just makes no sense.
Makes no sense. And by the way, you know, one of the things that confused me for the many months where we knew they were going to get divorced, but she never pulled the trigger until last week. One of the things we knew, or we assumed, was the only real asset was the house.
Right.
And
split it down the middle.
yeah, it's easy. And so why did it take so long? And I could never figure that out. And never in my wildest dreams did I assume that it was because they didn't have a prenup and they had all this other stuff. But what's happened is that because it's so difficult, I think that the negotiations got nasty. We knew there was a long period where they weren't even talking to each other. But now it all makes sense that it was never just the house. It's all these other things. And they're going to have to figure this thing out.
Francis Koromar from Minnesota. The fact that they did not sign a prenup is just going to get messy. Both have considerable assets that will have to be dealt with in their divorce, and JLo filed the divorce also with no lawyer, which is just crazy. That just means whatever both of them made over the nearly 2 years of marriage is just, honestly, I would think is probably going to have to be split equally.
Well, they got to figure that out. I mean, what is equally when it comes to a company that has kind of an infinite possibility?
Right.
And they got to figure this thing out.